All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to something that it did different. Um, all my cookie cards on the table right now. I am so far beyond and past OKKK right now. I can barely function. Um, I'm not sleeping the way I will want to. I will randomly pass out. I'm in a constant panic state. It really sucks to be me right now. Um, so I'm going to do something that I do all the time to deal with stuff like this, which is do something completely unrelated but slightly creative. And this time I'm going to do Ginny D's The D&D tag. If you are unaware, Ginny D is an amazing content creator. I believe she started in cosplay and has a background in music. She's a phenomenal vocalist. Um, and she became really famous because not only did she do this incredible jester cosplay, but she mastered the accent that Laura Bailey uses when she plays Jester. And when I say mastered, I mean that from a linguistics standpoint, as someone that studied various dialects and accents of English specifically for close to a decade. Um, she was phenomenally, she still is phenomenally good at it. Better than some dialect coaches I've seen. That is how good she is at this. So she created this tag thing, which if you're not familiar with what a tag video is, it's basically there's a bunch of questions, you answer them, and then you tag other people. It's basically a YouTube chain letter. They used to be super popular. They're not quite as popular anymore because, to be blunt, they were really annoying and extremely overused. But they're very easy content to make, and it helps me to not have my mind on all of my anxiety and the adrenaline pumping through my body and all the other bad things happening right now. So, yeah, I'm going to do the D&D tag. I'm going to tag some people at the end because that's how these things work, and then you guys can figure out if you like it or not. So, yeah. By the way, in the description below, I will have a link to Ginny and Mark Hulmes of tag videos. They're the ones that actually created the tag. So definitely check out their stuff. So, question number one: what was your first D&D character? Um, So the interesting thing about this, I've been playing D&D and been familiar with D&D for a lot longer than I've been actually playing it to the table. Probably the biggest reason for that being I grew up in a very conservative Christian household and was told that D&D was a gateway to Satanism. So I was not allowed to play. I wasn't allowed to own any of the books. Nothing. But I did play D&D based video games. The first one I played was Dark Sun, which you actually created a party of four. So if you technically want to call that my first D&D character, you can. However, in the spirit of this, I think she actually means the actual first character I played at the table. And that was it was in the fourth edition. That was the first D&D system that I played on it at the tabletop, and it was his name was Tarwin Ichthuan, and he was a tiefling blade singer, which doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form. Blade singing is an Eladrin fighting style. in general, like in the fifth edition, it's actually limited to elves and half elves. In fourth edition, it was written into the class that it's generally only taught to elves. It's an elven fighting style. They're very secretive about it. But I came up with this weird backstory because I didn't understand what it was. I came up with this weird backstory where I had a mentor that taught it to me, and I never went further than that. Like nowadays, my characters have really elaborate backstories, but back then it's like, oh, I want to play Blade Singer. I think it's cool. So yeah, in fourth edition, Blade Singer was a version of the wizard class. And it was interesting to say the least. I believe the Blade Singer is one of the essentials characters, which for fourth edition D&D had two different kind of versions. You had the original, and then you had what was called the essentials. And the essentials was really simplified, where you had a lot less choices and the things like that. And if I remember correctly, the Blade Singer was an essentials character, or at least, or no, that it was actually it was from the Neverwinter source book, so it wasn't essentials. But yeah, you got to pick a sword that you would use as your implement. I chose this as a scimitar because I just thought a tiefling wielding a scimitar casting spells, that would be super cool. And it was for a campaign that self-destructed pretty quickly. I had a board gaming group that I created with the express purpose of eventually turning it into a D&D campaign. Because I'd gotten really into the tabletop with Will Wheaton, and then I'd found him on Acquisitions Incorporated, and I became obsessed with Acquisitions Incorporated and D&D. And so yeah, I made this character, and I don't think it got higher than maybe level 2 or 3. Because the campaign was just that short. It only lasted for like a month or two. And yeah, it was there was a lot of issues. We had a player that would get actually violent when things didn't go their way, like bad rolls. They would get up, they'd throw dice across the rooms, they'd flip chairs and stuff like that. And so yeah, the whole campaign just fizzled out when we eventually kind of politely convinced that player to not play with us. And we started a new campaign where I was the DM, which is where I am now. So yeah, first character was a 4th edition tiefling Blade Singer, which was super fun to play for the like half a dozen sessions I actually got to play him as. So number 2. Which D&D class is your least favorite to play, or do you not want to play? This one's kind of difficult simply because D&D Deep Dive has really opened my mind to the incredibly varied ways you can play all the different classes, and just how unique and interesting they can all be. I don't really have a least favorite, to be honest. If I had to pick a class to be my quote unquote least favorite, which effectively would just be the one that I would play last after I'd played all the other ones and would still have a lot of fun playing. I'm thinking, I'm going through all the classes in my head right now. I'm thinking it would probably be the cleric, just because I have a very strong affinity for paladins. I like paladins. I used to myself insert characters in D&D games used to all be paladins. before I became the monk player that you all know and love, or at least some of you kind of remember every so often. And so, anytime I think about playing a cleric, I will come up with a backstory and everything, and I go, "That's a little more of a paladin." And in online RPGs, I play healers all the time, and healing in WoW for like 4 years at least. I got burnt out on healing. I don't like it, and so fifth edition is better for clerics if you are going to be that kind of healing kind of cleric, which a lot of people just suspect you to be. If you're playing a cleric, it's better. It's still not great. I still technically prefer the fourth edition version of the cleric and the leaders in general, simply because almost all your healing things were minor actions instead of major actions, so you got to be a much more active cleric, which in fifth edition is a little bit more along the lines of a paladin anyway. So it would probably be cleric, but I would still have a ton of fun playing a cleric. Fifth edition D&D is super awesome, and I don't think any of the classes you can't have fun in, no matter your play style. You just have to understand them pretty well. So some of them are just plain fun to play all the time. Like rogues are pretty simple to have a lot of fun, but playing them. Most of this is spellcasters are pretty simple. Like wizards are pretty simple. Sorcerers are pretty simple to play. Once you pick your spells that you really like. I'm not saying they can't be complex, but for starting characters, I like to start them with something like rogues tend to be really easy. Fighters tend to be really easy and still really fun. Stuff like that. Number 3. What D&D spell would you most want to have in real life? Misty Step. I am a huge fan of teleportation. In general, like if I had a superpower, I would want it to be teleportation. I love Nightcrawler. My Shadow Monk is a teleporting character. My favorite 4th edition character I ever played was a Avengers Sword Mage hybrid that had 6 different teleportation abilities that they could use. Like it was just super fun. And that was at level 6. He had 6 different teleportation abilities. I went over to drive. So yeah, Misty Step would probably be it. But beyond that, yeah, no, it would be Misty Step. It would be so amazingly awesome. So, number 4. What is your favorite D&D monster? Ooh, that's a good one. I'm not 100% sure. I've gotten so used to kind of creating and flavoring my own monsters. I haven't played like I haven't run traditional monsters in a little while, or at least not any of the fun ones. Beholders are really fun, but I feel like everybody says beholders. You know what? I actually like vampires. Vampires are a ton of fun in D&D to play. Especially if you do the variants that have spell casting or weapons. You know, the really strong like Strahd type of vampires. Those are super fun to throw against characters, and they require the characters to really think on their feet. So probably the various vampires. Number 5. What's your favorite NPC / villain that you've ever encountered slash created. I would probably have to say, and for the life of me, because my memory gets worse as my anxiety and depression get worse. So right now I can barely remember a couple hours ago. So I'm going to forget one of their names, but it's a duo, and they show up in a lot of my games, just so I can have fun with voices. But one of them's named Gareth, and the other one I can't remember what I could call him, but Gareth talks like this, and he's got that kind of that Cockney accent, and he does this, and then the other one he talks like this, and he's like, Gareth, I don't like, Philip. That's his name. So it's Philip and Gareth. So Gareth talks like this. He's like, Philip, I'll save you. And then Philip's like down here. He's kind of similar to maybe like he's just like a good old Cockney boy. And so he'd be like, "Hey, I get it. What you doing, mate?" "I don't know, Philip. I just wanted to go over here, and then there was all this bad stuff happening." And they're always like comic relief, and I will have conversations between those two characters that will last for 10 15 minutes as my players are just crying in laughter, because they're silly and fun, and I insert them into all of my games. They're just fun characters. So a very close second, and again I can't remember what his name, but I got inspired by an Adventurers League DM that we were it was during the Curse of Strahd season, so everything was set in Barovia. And he played this mayor that I can't remember. Burgermeister, that's what they were called, was Burgermeisters. And so he played this Burgermeister with this kind of really cheesy, like Baltic Russian and an accent. And he was just this really kind of down-to-earth, very good-natured guy. And so I turned him into a shopkeeper that sells magic items. And again, I can't remember his name, but he names all the magic items. Like, he'll rename magic items. Like, "Hey, welcome to, I don't know his in the name. Welcome to my shop. And here is the most amazing thing. This is, this is a magic potion. And what it does is if you drink it, it will make your wounds disappear. I call it my amazing wound healy majigger potion, and it's amazing. You should buy like 400 of them. Or this is an amazing thing. You see this? It looks like a broken sword. Yes, that's what it looks like, but this is not what it is. No. You see what it is I push button here. I push button, go, look at that. It's like a flashlight, but it cut things. Yes. I call this my amazing flashy cutty blade. It's the amazing flashy cutty blade. It's yours for 400 platinum pieces. It's amazing, yes? And yeah, he's just super fun to play. He's a little rough on the vocal chords, but he's super fun to play. So yeah. Number 6. Has one of your characters ever died, and what killed them? Yes, my first Adventurers League character died a gruesome death of falling. Aether, my shadow monk, on his, I believe it was his second adventure. We played the reason I made Aether, we had an 8-hour long game that Adventures League rules state you have to have a minimum of 3 players, and we only had 2 people sign up for the game. And if you don't have enough players, the DM's not allowed to run the game. This was at a convention that I worked for, and So what happened as the organizer, I would go around to all the tables, and I'd already kind of planned on the idea that, you know what, I'll sit in on any table to make sure that we're always running to the tables. If there's ever a thing short, and sure enough, the table needed another player. Now this is a tier 2 adventure, so I had to build a level 5 character, and so I used DM experience because I'd been running a lot of games up to that point. So I used some DM experience in that, and I built a level 5 Shadow Monk, and we did this 8-hour adventure, and it was super fun. It was the first Adventures League game I played in. It was my first like really big 5th edition game. And so after, kind of making sure that everything was going well, because I was still helping to run the convention, they invited me to play in their next game, which is only for 4 hours. And in the game, we had to go, I think, to a mine and get something out of it. But on the way there, we crossed this bridge over this 200-foot chasm in a mountain covered with snow. And when we got to the other side, there was a group of Yetis there. And these Yetis had the ability to stun you, which incapacitates you, makes you auto-fail any strength or athletics, strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics checks. And so what ended up happening was I got stunned my first round because I can't roll worth shit. And I got stunned, and he took me to the edge of this chasm and pushed me off. He grappled me, which I couldn't resist. He pulled me over, and then he launched me off the cliff. Now I was a monk, and so had I been... had it not been for the fact I was incapacitated, I could have used my reaction to have the fall damage. But because I was incapacitated, I couldn't, and so I went from full health to over my negative full health and instantly died. And this was literally, it was my first Adventures League character. I had played a grand total of 1 8-hour session with this character. And we found out later that the DM had misread the adventure, and the Yeti didn't have the abilities that the DM had given it. But what ended up happening is we had a level to 10 druid in that party, and he cast reincarnation on me. And actually, he Aethers started as a high elf monk, which isn't the greatest combo because monks are dexterity wisdom, and high elves get dexterity from being an elf and intelligence, which didn't really help my monk. And so I got reincarnated. We rolled for it. We did everything we were supposed to. I got reincarnated as a wood elf, which fit much better, and that was the character that I played all the way up to level 17. So, but yeah, I was really upset. I did get a glass of very, very nice scotch out of it. Because the DM is still a friend of mine, and he mentioned if he ever anytime he kills a character, he buys the player a drink. And so yeah, I got this really, really smooth glass of scotch out of it. So that was nice back when I could still drink. Cool. So number 7. What's your best natural to the 20s story? To be blunt, I don't have a lot of nat 20s stories involving me, simply because I don't roll them often. I roll really, really bad. Like I could give Will Wheaton a run for his money. Like I'm that bad. Though recently it's gotten a little better since I've been doing DMing stuff, and my rolls are not quite as necessary as they are when you're playing. Just because there's so many more rolls going on. If one of your, it's a DM. If one of your characters dies, well, that's what they're supposed to do. You're running the monsters. So don't feel as bad when I roll like shit. But a natural to 20 story. Um. Oh, this is a really good one. So I was playing a paladin, and I was playing a vengeance paladin, and the DM for this, for whatever reason, I had been his DM previously, and he decided he wanted to run a game, and I decided I wanted to actually play for once, and this was in an actual store. We were running Curse of Strahd, and all the monsters, like every single encounter, every single monster targeted my character. And this was Adventurers League games. So they had rules and regulations and all that stuff. This wasn't at a this wasn't like a home game or something like that. But every single combat, I would be targeted. And I did not play your kind of traditional sword and board paladin. I was a vengeance paladin. I dual wielded long swords because I was a human variant that took the dual wielder feat. So I wanted to be a like big damage dealer kind of character. And the DM took I want to say offense, but he was not particularly pleased about it. And I going from the person in going from the person underneath someone to the person in power can change things. So the first the 3 sessions, every single session, my character was rendered unconscious. He never died, but he's rendered unconscious because all the monsters would swarm him first. And it started getting really, really annoying to me, especially since there also became this kind of running joke that the DMs started where they would call my character fat because we added a couple new players, and the way we added them in after like the second thing was they came across where one of our battles was, and they found an indentation where I'd fallen unconscious, and they noticed that the grooves were very, very deep. Because I was a fully armored and heavy armor wielding a pair of long swords. I was a heavy guy, and so it turned into I was the fat paladin, which wasn't something I was okay with, and eventually had to talk to the DM and say, hey, can lay this off? Like that was one of the insults that I got when I was in middle school and in high school because I was a bigger guy, and yeah, it's not cool. Like my character's not fat. My character's not overweight. He's solid muscle, and I'm starting to take it a little bit personal. So can you guys just not? So anyway, we eventually get to the town, and I have purposefully not read Curse of Strahd because I hate it when DMs use their knowledge of the adventures to get an advantage. I didn't want to do that. So I purposefully don't know what's going on. And I've kind of relegated myself to the fact that despite the fact that I want to be the cool damage dealing, edgelord kind of character, I'm not going to be able to do that because the makeup we didn't really have like a tank kind of character. And so I'm playing a little bit more defensively and playing a little more traditional sword and board paladin while wielding a pair of long swords. But we get to we find this woman, if I remember correctly. And this kind of demon-armed character comes over and tries to take the woman. And I'm a chaotic good paladin. So I still have that protection thing built in. And so my character takes a stand. Like this, the way the DM played him was this incredibly abusive, just horrible person with a demon arm. And he kept trying to rip this woman away. And so I finally went up and said, you need to take your hands off her. Though it was more of, you need to take your hands off her. And the DM played him as really, he's like, no, man, you're not going to do that. And so I'd never played a character with a strength score. I played monks and bards, and I never had a strength score. This character did. And so he tries to push past me because I stepped in between the woman and this demon guy, or human with a demon arm. And so I step aside and he tries to push pat me. I go, I want to grapple him. And he goes, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, I know what that means, DM. I use that. Yes, I'm sure. Well, this guy was supposed to be really, really tough. And he's eventually someone that you have to fight later in the adventure. So I grapple him and say, no, you're not going to touch her. But I'm doing everything I can to de-escalate this situation. I'm a high charisma character. I'm not even using intimidate to do it. I'm trying to go, listen, whatever you want to do is fine. But you're not touching that woman. She said, no, you're not going to touch her. And he's not having any of it. And he's, getting mad at me. And he keeps saying he works for Strahd or something. And I don't really care because I don't know who Strahd is. And he attacks me. I think he just punches me. And I turn to the DM. I'm like, you sure he did that? Are you sure that's what you wanted to do? He's like, I know what that means. I'm the DM. I'm like, okay. I draw both my long swords and I attack him. And he goes, what? I'm a vengeance paladin. I have done everything I can to de-escalate this situation. He is just to attack me. I'm a vengeance paladin. And my entire party, despite the fact that I'm picking a fight with a boss that's super high level, my entire party is like, no, that's fair. That's totally fair. Like you're asking for it. This is definitely okay. It's just like, okay, make your attack roll, and I nat to the 20 on my first attack, and I add a smite on because that's what paladins do. And then my second attack, I just did a regular, and I added another. I think at that point they were both second level smites. So I ended up doing like 100 points of damage in one turn. And he hit me, and he hit me hard, but it wasn't enough to take me down because I was level like 3 or 4 at that point, so I could take a few hits. And the rest of my party just like one shot him, like he literally just that. And we killed this boss that we weren't supposed to deal with for like 4 more levels. And it pissed off the DM because he wanted to punish me for ruining his story. And what ended up happening later on in the campaign, which is when I've eventually quit, is we eventually came back to the town. We found out that all these people were murdered. And the reason why they were murdered was Strahd was mad that we killed his lieutenant. And so he went and murdered an entire town. And blamed me, my characters specifically, and that's when I was like, you know what, I'm done. At this point, I know the adventure at this point, and I know this isn't how it works. Yeah, I'm done. But it's still really cool. I almost one shot a boss. So that's my best natural to 20 story. Number 8. What is your best natural one story? I got tons of those because I roll nat ones all the time. I think my favorite one though it was literally the first 5th edition game I'd ever played. I was at Gen Con. It was D&D Next at that point. They just started playtesting. I think it was in its second year of the playtest. Or no, a year had. Yeah, it was just the beginning of the second year. It started a year previous, and so they had this thing where you would sign up, and then everyone would sit down with level 2 characters, and I think it was called the Siege of Candlekeepers or something like that. Effectively, what happened was you'd be split up. It was the first epic for D&D Next. So what that means is different. All the different tables that were playing at the same time, they would all be actually playing the same game, just in different parts of it. And what we were doing was preparing Candlekeep for a siege from a Dracolich. And during the game, we were, I can't remember what we were doing. We got into a fight with some skeletons as we were given an assignment to go shore up the tower and get the magical defenses going in that particular tower. And so we get there, we find some skeletons. I'm playing a monk, and at that point in D&D next, they still had a lot more damage vulnerabilities than they do now. So skeletons were weak, were vulnerable to bludgeoning damage, which is all I did. So I ran up and I was punching, like I was taking out skeletons left and right. And we had another player that I cannot remember his name. But he came forward, and this is the first time I'd ever dealt with the advantage to the disadvantage system. He had flanking or something. He got an advantage on the attack for some reason. And so the guy goes, what you do is you roll to the 2d20s and you take the higher roll. I'm like, oh, that's like the Avenger ability in 4th edition. They're like, yeah, very similar. And I'm like, cool, do it, dude. And so he rolled and he got 2 nat 1s. The entire table stopped playing. All of us took our phones out, and I still have it on my phone. I still have the picture. We all took pictures of this double nat 1. He got advantage, the first advantage any of us had ever seen, because this was all our first game. And it was he failed completely. The other cool thing about that game is they actually put 2 of the industry people there, like the people that we were playing with. I believe they worked for the company that made Gloom. They worked for that company, and so because they were presenting there, they had a deal with Wizards of the Coast where they could send some of their people, and they would just assign them to a table to let them play D&D next. So I got to meet some industry people, and it was super fun. But yeah, double nat 1s. It was amazing. We were also flabbergasted. Even the DM went, wow, you miss. And he's like, you think? And it's like, does he chop off his head or something? It's like, no, we don't do critical fumbles in 5th edition. But just, you're done for this combat, okay? And then I came in and I'm like, whoa! And killed everything. But it was really great. Number 9. What's the highest level you've ever played a character to? This is 17. Aether, my D&D Adventure League character, made it to 17 before I had stopped playing the Adventures League. I would love to play him again. I would love to get him up to level to 20, but I actually don't think there are enough Tier 4 adventures in the Adventures League to actually get a character to level 20. Or if they are, I need to find someone that would actually be willing to run them. And Aether was created long ago in the Adventures League, back when you got things like gold instead of treasure points and stuff like that, and used actual experience instead of experience points. Or it was, the Adventures League is so different now. And legacy characters can't actually play new stuff, or they can. They don't get anything from it. So, yeah, I will probably never get Aether up to level to 20, but someday I hope to. Number 10. What's your favorite magical item? The Pokeball. I cannot remember for the life of me what it's called. It's a wondrous item. It's in the Dungeon Master's guide, so it's not something fancy or anything, but it's a set of rings that collapse down into a little ball. And when you throw it and use the command word, the rings all expand and then wrap themselves around a player or a thing. I think it's up to a large creature, and they restrain it. And it's a DC 20 strength check to break out of it. And it is massively useful. Like everyone that asks for magic items in 5th edition, they're always looking for magic weapons or, stuff like that. No, the Pokeball is by far my favorite magic item. I gave it to one of my campaigns, and they used it a ton. And I loved it because it is so useful to be able to restrain a creature. at will. The only downside to it is if anyone ever makes their strength check while they're in it, it breaks and it's completely useless at that point. But up until that point, for low-level adventures, it is one of the most useful items in the game. And so I super, super love it. For the life of me, I cannot remember what it's called. But if you know what it is, put it in the comments below, because it's the greatest magic item in 5th edition ever. If we're going any edition, 4th edition had some really cool magic items, including... I can't remember what it was called. But it was you could have any weapon with this kind of modifier. That's how 4th edition magic items worked, is you'd have a base item and then you could put these modifiers on it, like a savage longsword plus 4 or something. This particular one I actually used on my character, my Avenger Sword Mage hybrid. And what it was is it's a magic sword that when you place it somewhere like on your back or on your belt or somewhere, and you say the command word, it is banished to an extra dimensional space. And then if you put your hand back in the place where you stowed it and speak the command word again as a minor action, it just appears in your hand. So you can never not have your weapon as long as you did do that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a super, super cool thing. Especially that particular character had summoned armor and cloth armor, because Avengers only wear cloth armor. So summoned cloth armor and this vanishing sword or whatever it was. And so right before combat, he would say his command word, and he would go from casual clothes to his magical cloth armor, and then he would reach behind his back and pull out, say the word, pull out his sword and just point it and swear his oath of the enmity and go for it. Like, it was a cool character. So both, being able to summon a weapon is always cool to me. Number 11. If you had an IRL alignment, what would it be? I am chaotic good to a fault. I believe very, very strongly in the ideas of freedom. Most of my life has been spent fighting against perceived tyranny and protecting people that couldn't protect themselves, to my own detriment. I had like a really, really bad Lancelot complex when I was in high school and the early part of my 20s, where I would bend over backwards to help people. I would bend over backwards just so far that, I would give people money that I didn't have to help them out, and would go into debt. Or a really great example of just how chaotic I was. A friend of mine started dating this really, really bad, abusive guy. And she was drinking the Kool-Aid and actually had cut off contact with me because her abusive boyfriend had told her she had to make a choice, and she chose her abuser over me, which is extremely common when you're in an abusive situation. Part of the abuse is the amount of control they have over you. So I didn't hold it against her. And at that point, I couldn't hold it against her, because in my mind, she was completely powerless, and I had to save her. But her friends and roommates hated this guy too, knew he was an abuser, knew that he was absolutely destroying this poor girl. And so we came up with this plan where he was a very aggressive person, and I knew I could convince him to hit me without using anything that could be construed as fighting words or anything that could get me in legal trouble. I simply had to kind of exist and not give in to his power for fantasy, and he would have tried to deck me. And so the plan was, her roommates were going to invite me over, because it was their apartment too. I was going to be there at the same time he was, and we were just going to let him beat the snot out of me until I either lost consciousness or the police got there. And the whole point of it was I wasn't going to fight back at all, because as soon as I threw a punch at him, I'd be going to jail too. I'd probably be able to eventually get out and claim self-defense. But as long as I didn't throw up a punch, there literally is nothing he could have done. As far as Wisconsin self-defense laws are concerned. Like we had figured this out, and so that was the plan. And I was 100% ready to let this person beat me within an inch of my life because I thought it would help her. And I can't remember what happened that made it so I didn't do it. It's very good that I didn't. The girl eventually dumped the guy, and I believe he went to prison. But because after she dumped him, he broke into their house and broke down their door to do it. And so yeah, he he went to jail for like a year. He was a bad dude, real bad. So yeah, I'm totally chaotic in the idea. I believe in freedom and the things like that, and good. I put myself last constantly. Part of that is my PTSD. I have a really hard time convincing myself that I'm a worthwhile person that deserves good things. And so doing bad things to myself just makes sense with that victim mentality. Yeah, that's me. I'm slowly getting healthier, though right now I'm not at all. 12. If you had to date one of your characters, which one would you pick? None. Absolutely none. Mostly because I've never played a female character, and I'm not attracted to guys, so there's that. But in addition to that, like, I've never really had a character that I had romantic feelings for, or like for me to be interested in someone, there has to be like a connection. Like I'm attracted to people I don't know, but for me to want to actually date someone, I have to get to know them for the first. And there has to be some sort of intimacy between us before I start feeling any romantic feelings for them. And none of the characters I've ever played, have ever been my ideal mate, or even within 3 or 4 steps of my ideal partner. Like I create characters that I think are interesting and are going to let me explore aspects of myself or of other people that I've never explored before. But most of my characters I play are messed up. Like, seriously not dateable material. I've never had an in-game romance with any of my characters. Like, they are not built to be romantic characters. They're meant to be more psychological experiments and looks into the human psyche and how it deals with different situations. They're not meant to have romance. So yeah, I've never created a character I would want to date. And if you put a gun to my head and said you have to date one of them, I would probably take the gun. Like I'm not I cannot just date a random person. That's just not how I am built. So yeah, I know it's kind of a cop out, but no, I would never date any one of my characters. Number 13. Is there a character you want to play but haven't had a chance to play yet? Tons. I am a DM. I am the eternal DM. So I very rarely, if ever, get to play characters. I sometimes will build characters that I eventually will put into some of my games as bosses or things like that, just so I can just so I can have the archetype kind of show up, and so I get to role play them as a bit. But they're boss characters. They're designed to be killed off. I'm not a fan of DM PCs. Aether, my Shadow Monk, did show up in one of my campaigns, and he literally was a lore dump. Like I had to create a lore dump character, and so I made it Aether because I'm like, you know what? I built the character already. I know how to play him. It'll just be easier to do this instead of building a brand new character just to use him a couple of times and then to throw him out once they know all the lore. But yeah, most recently I created a card throwing fighter, battle master for a fighter that I really want to play. I think he'd be super fun. I have a character that one of these days I'm actually going to, because Chris Perkins follows me on Twitter. I'm assuming he lost a bet or didn't realize what he was doing. But eventually I'm going, despite the fact that Chris Perkins does not do acquisitions in Corporate anymore, eventually I'm going to pitch this character to Chris Perkins and go, hey, if you guys are ever doing another online game and you need a new int to turn, this is my character. This is how he fits into the world. This is how he would interact. I think it would be a really fun character for Omen and Jim and Viari to interact with. So I've got tons of characters I want to play, and because I never get to play, and I'm always the DM, I never get to play them. Yeah. Number 14. Are you a dice goblin or a dice minimalist? Clicky math rocks, Mick. Shinies. I'm a bit in the middle. I think I've got 6 or 7 different dice sets. I'm always a fan of more dice. I showed these in one of my videos, but this is actually a Christmas present from it's either my brother or his girlfriend, or maybe both. But this is a D10. This is a D20. They are really cool green crystal dice. And they come in this really awesome Lord Drakon box. And I love them. I haven't had a chance to use them yet. But I think they're just super cool. So I love the dice. I love getting them. But dice cost my money, and I haven't worked in 6 years. So generally, if I get the dice, when I was playing regularly, I would pick up new dice fairly regularly. Like, once or twice a year, I'd pick up another set of dice. Whenever I'd go to a convention, I'd pick up a set of dice. And I've lost a few, but yeah. So I wouldn't say I'm like a hoarder, but I like having the dice. Yeah. Finally, number 15. What rule or mechanic have you never quite wrapped your brain around? Critical fumbles. I hate critical fumbles, specifically ones that make you attack your allies or do damage. A critical miss is already a negative enough experience for you. You're going to miss. Your DM will probably narrate, or if you're me, you will narrate, making it embarrassing or comical or something. That's what a nat one is for. But critical fumble tables are literally punishing you for rolling for something you have no control over. The dice are random. It is literally just a punishment for you rolling poorly. And I hate that. It turns into this kind of vindictive thing between the DM and the players, because in general, the DM's going to be the one rolling on the critical fumble table. And just from a purely kind of logical standpoint, in a world where your weapon is the difference between life and death, and your chosen profession is using that weapon, whether it's an actual weapon or your magic or whatever. Your chosen profession, the thing that you do to earn your living, is to use that. 1 out of every 20 times you swing your sword or cast a spell, you are going to hurt one of your allies with it. You shouldn't be adventuring if 1 out of every 20 swings of your weapon, you are hurting the people you're supposed to be helping, or you're turning it on yourself. Darwin effect, kill yourself off. You should not be adventuring. Go home and farm, where a nat 1 just means, you kill a few potatoes. I think it's the dumbest thing. It was something that kind of came into form during 3rd edition, which is an incredibly brutal edition in general. And then Pathfinder ran with it, and critical fumbles became a huge part of Pathfinder. I know I don't believe it's in the core rules or anything. Most of the people I know that play Pathfinder and the games that I've been a part of, critical fumbles are the thing, and it's just meant to punish players. And I don't think that's how role-playing games should be played. You shouldn't be adding things to the game specifically to punish players for things that they haven't done wrong. You want to punish a player for doing something stupid, or not respecting the game or the other players, go for it. I'm all for that. But punishing them for simply existing and rolling a die that one of the faces is always going to come up 1. It's dumb. It's negative. It's a negative experience for the players. It's a negative experience for the DM, and it creates a really bad power dynamic between the DM and the players. And I've seen people quit playing the game because of it. So, yeah, I will never have critical fumbles in any of my games beyond like a charity one-shot parody game. Simply because crazy things happened during that, and I'm fine with, someone lopping off an arm, because I'm gonna let them continue playing their character by swinging the sword with their teeth or something. It's supposed to be funny and weird, and so I'm fine with that kind of macabre humor. But other than that, I will never use a critical fumble to the table in any of my games. I just think it's a bad idea. So yeah, that was about twice as long as Ginny's, but as you all know, I did talk a lot. Anyway, that's all for me. Tag time. I am going to tag the always classy Don Diego, Elias Thompson, and who else? I might, I'll tag Ilea, the green-eyed trombonist. So you 3 do the D&D tag, or don't. Like I said, back in the early days of YouTube, these chain letter tag videos were super annoying. So if you don't want to, don't do it. But if you do it. And Ginny, if you watch this, why are you wasting your time? You have so many better things to do. Mark, this is the same. But if you guys are watching this, thanks. I enjoyed your tag. All right, that's all for me today. I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye-bye.